Welcome to American Catechism by Stab the Dragon Productions for episode number 51, as we are celebrating the birthday of the United States Coast Guard with a glass of Redwood Empire Pipedream Bourbon. Coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas on Wednesday, January 28th, 2026, where we are digging out of the snow, sleet, and ice. It is now sunny and 52 degrees, about 40 degrees warmer than yesterday morning. This channel is dedicated to exploring the history of the United States and Western civilization, as well as looking at our politics, culture, theology, and celebrating with some whiskeys along the way. We celebrate our armed forces, clearly, as a part of what we do here, and the Coasties deserve all the recognition and respect that we can give them. So I have chosen a California whiskey today because the Coast Guard has a lot of people in a lot of places in California doing the right thing. So just the facts. Redwood Empire Pipedream Bourbon comes out of Grattan, California, Northern California, in the Redwood Forest. This is 90 proof, aged at least 4 years. This is a bourbon blend of Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, and California bourbons. I paid $32.99 for this 750 milliliter bottle in January of 2026. Tasting notes: I get sweet corn, grass, honey, hints of vanilla, not much of a burn and not much of a finish. My score was a 76, letter grade solid B. My recommendation: this is a sweet, gentle 90 proof blended bourbon that has very good value for its price, for sure. It is sweeter than my personal preferences are, but not sweet in the artificial sickening way either. It's a very good beginner bourbon, I think, with nothing offensive and not much of a burn. It works well in an old-fashioned. All right, to the Coast Guard. United States Coast Guard. A history from World War I to the present. The U.S. Coast Guard is one of the 6 branches of the United States Armed Forces, and they celebrate their birthday on, I'm going to say their first birthday, on August 4th, because in 1790, President George Washington signed an act passed by Congress establishing the United States Revenue Marine and authorized 10 cutters to be constructed. And so this makes the Coast Guard actually the oldest of all the branches of the United States. But wait a minute. The United States Marine Corps claims to be the oldest military service with a beginning date of November 10th of 1775. Which they celebrate every year. So how can I say the Coast Guard is older? Because in 1775, we were not yet the United States with a voted on and enforced constitution. So once we became free from Great Britain and finally had our government established, our Constitution, and the first United States Congress and the first United States President, the U.S. Revenue Marine was then established with the primary purpose of collecting import duties and tariffs, a word that is once again in use today, right? And that's right. So they worked for the Treasury Department to collect taxes. Imagine that. The young United States was in debt up to their eyebrows and had to collect taxes, so they established the Revenue Marine and built 10 cutters, which was the name of the small sailing vessel the British used for the same purposes. Churches exist on donations and tithes, businesses exist on profits and investments, governments exist on taxes. Now, a few weeks ago on this channel, I discussed actually a few months ago, I discussed the McFarland Reserve 4-grain bourbon and the Whiskey Rebellion of 1793-94. Same thing. They needed to collect taxes, and people don't like taxes. Governments are necessary because we are fallen, sinful people, and taxes support the governments, and governments supposedly create, sustain order, right? You don't want chaos, like Minneapolis. Now, that's all about the first birthday of the Coast Guard, August. Well, now, this is January. January 28th is the second birthday of the Coast Guard, and that's when, of 1915 is the year, President Woodrow Wilson signed an act that combined the United States Revenue Marine, whose name had gradually changed to the U.S. Revenue Cutter Service, and another organization called the U.S. Life-Saving Service, they rescued people in sinking ships, to form the new United States Coast Guard. And so that's why January 28th is the real birthday of the U.S. Coast Guard. The missions of the Coast Guard have evolved through the centuries, from its original job of collecting import duties and tariffs to fighting pirates in the Caribbean, and we're still doing that. Stopping rum smugglers, drug smugglers, illegal slave trade, surveying waterways, islands, coastlines, and rivers, search and rescue, helping the Navy fight wars, delivering diplomats and diplomatic messages, law enforcement and safety inspections, drug interdiction, disaster relief. Now, here in Texas in July 4th weekend, the recent Kerrville flood here in Texas, there was a Coast Guard helicopter crew and swimmers assisting in the recovery of victims. Buoy maintenance for sea lane navigation, and they managed the lighthouses, among other things, a dozen other missions. So the drug interdiction missions are big and controversial now, simply because Trump has given the kill on sight order, thankfully. The videos of our Navy and Coast Guard destroying or capturing drug boats are awesome, but people want to complain about that because they prefer drug runners to law and order. But wait, there's more. The illegal oil tankers that we are capturing also include the Coast Guard. And for the future of Greenland, I can see there being several more icebreakers entering the U.S. Coast Guard service and patrolling Greenland. So, cheers to the Coast Guard. The U.S. Coast Guard is the largest Coast Guard in the world, unless the China commies have surpassed us, which is possible. We've got over 40,000 active duty members, 7,700 reservists, 21,000 auxiliaries, and thousands of civilians hired and contracted. The Revenue Marine was founded underneath the Treasury Department of Alexander Hamilton, and then went to the Department of Transportation in 1967, and then the Department of Homeland Security in 2003. In wartime, they do operate underneath the Department of Defense, which is now the War Department, and the Department of the Navy. The Coast Guard motto is Semper Paratus, always ready. In World War II, the Coast Guard suffered about 2,000 casualties and served in D-Day, the invasion of Normandy, and several of the island landings in the Pacific, as well as patrolling for submarines in our home waters and escorting convoys. In my personal life, I did know a guy at one of my jobs who was a Coast Guard veteran with a Purple Heart. He got shot on a drug interdiction mission. I've known one World War II veteran at our church that I served in who was a part of D-Day, and he was an active in the Coast Guard in D-Day. And then we had an active duty Marine who was getting married and then re-enlisting into the Coast Guard out of the Marine Corps. So I've known a few Coasties in my life. And I have found a few books here that are very informative, and there are even a couple of movies out there. I have not yet watched this movie. I should have watched it before today, but this is a movie about the Coast Guard and a rescue that they did. So this is based on a true story. So if anybody has seen this movie, you want to put something in the notes when I post this video, feel free. But I would really like to watch this movie before August next time. And of course, there's lots of books written about various things that the Coast Guard has done, heroic things, rescuing people and stuff, such as this one. All right. Why did I choose a California whiskey for celebrating the Coast Guard? Well, the 11th Coast Guard District covers California with 43 units and over 2,400 servicemen and women. It has the largest Coast Guard training base on the West Coast at Petaluma. Hope I said that right. So, happy birthday to the United States Coast Guard, and cheers. Got a Coast Guard glass going on there. I don't know if you can see that or not. But that is a Coast Guard whiskey glass. And that is a delicious, sweet, very corn-forward bourbon. All right. I don't have a Coast Guard tie. I've been looking. I do have a tie with plenty of anchors on it. Dual purpose. Navy or Coast Guard. Let's get into this whiskey. Redwood Empire was founded in 2015 by Derek Benham and Jeff Duckhorn in a small town in Northern California, Groton. Maybe I'm saying that right. Graton. This whiskey is named for the 14th tallest tree in the world. Pipedream is the name. 367 feet tall. Wow. 1,340 years old, deep in the patriarch forest of the Humboldt Redwood State Park. I have never been to California. I would love to see the giant redwoods. I would love to see something beautiful that God has created like that. In 2025, however, this whiskey company moved operations to Mare Island, near San Francisco. They contribute to Save Redwoods League of California. Save the Redwoods. Cheers. This whiskey earned a platinum at the LA Spirits Award and received 91 points by Whiskey Advocate. So for history, 4 out of 5 points. Bottle, label, and marketing. This bottle has clear glass. It's got the classic shape, a little bit smaller at the base than the shoulders. It's round. It's got the nice fluted neck. It's got a real cork. Real corks are always nice, although maybe perhaps inefficient. I don't know. I like the appearance of a real cork, but real corks sometimes have problems. The label is tan. I like the label. Okay, it's kind of simple in some ways, but it's kind of a tan or cream, off-white at least, and then the kind of a tan, reddish-brown print there. And that speaks of the redwood trees and John Muir. It gives the longitude and latitude of the tree that this is named for. I think that's pretty dang cool as well. So, 4 out of 5 points. So, it gives a lot of information there on the back as well. So, there's a lot of cool stuff on this label. 4 out of 5 points. Appearance of the whiskey in the bottle, you'll notice that the whiskey may be just a little bit cloudy. I'm not sure if this is filtered. I don't know. It may just be the reflection of the label in there, but it's fairly light colored whiskey. And so you look at that, and it's a nice golden yellow color. That's a strong 2, but I don't think it comes up to a 3. So that's a 2 out of 5 for me. And composition. Again, this is a 90 proof bourbon. And they give a mash bill here. 73 corn, 18 rye, 5 malted barley, and 4% wheat. So it's a 4-grain bourbon from 4 different states. Aged between 4 and 12 years. So it's a blend of bourbons from Indiana, Tennessee, Kentucky, and California. 14 out of 15 for clarity. I really like the amount of information they give you here. I'm not a big fan of blended multi-state whiskeys, but I get the idea. It's still the science is there. Blending is an art form and a science. So, kudos for that, even though that's not necessarily what I'm going for. And I just didn't really read the label. I wanted something strictly from California, and when I got home and read the label, it's like, well, great. Oh, well, but it still tastes pretty good. So composition, 14 out of 15. The nose, corn is the dominant flavor I get. Honey, grass, a little bit of vanilla. 7 out of 10 for the nose. It's a fairly simple nose for me. And the taste is just like the nose. I mean, it's sweet, but sweet in the right direction. So I'm getting honey and sweet corn. Hints of vanilla. I struggle with vanilla at times, but I'm thinking I'm getting vanilla popcorn flavor going on there. I'm not getting any of the rye. I'm not getting wood really. No real spices that I can identify. So it's not bad. This is a very sweet and simple bourbon. For me, not much depth going on there. So this is kind of a little bit left of center for me in my wheelhouse. Taste 19 of 25. The mouthfeel, burn, and finish. It's got a decent mouthfeel for a 90 proof. Nice tingles, but there's no real burn here. The sweet corn notes do linger a bit, but it's not a rich finish, not a long finish. So 11 of 15. Versatility. This is certainly a pleasant drink neat. Okay, absolutely. I think it's going to be a touch weak for ice. If I was to put this on ice, it would lose most of its flavor for me. Maybe you would be different, but I think it could make a decent cocktail. I did make an old-fashioned using maple syrup, black walnut bitters, and a Luxardo dark cherry, orange peel, and it did turn out pretty good. But the flavors of the actual bourbon were kind of muted. But I think the walnut bitters really did help this. So let me try another cocktail real quick, and I'll be right back. And I'm back. And instead of another old-fashioned, I chose to make a Boulevardier. And so this has got some sweet vermouth and some Campari and the bourbon. So it's a very simple cocktail, 3 ingredients plus ice. The Campari is pretty strong. It can take over. So I don't put a whole lot. I look at a recipe, try it once. I adjust it according to my palate. And I know that things like vermouth and Campari go strong with me. So I reduce the amounts. So, this has got a couple ounces of bourbon and probably not even a half ounce each of Campari and sweet vermouth. So here it is. And again, the Campari kind of takes over. The bourbon lightens it a little bit and sweetens it some. So again, I'm just experimenting with these cocktails, but I'm going to add a little bit more bourbon to this, because that Campari just absolutely dominates. And there's some recipes that call for a 1-to-1 ratio. And it's like, there's no way. All right, so anyway, the Boulevardier, and that's better since I added more bourbon. So that's just my palate. You do what you do, you. For versatility, neat ice or mixer, 4 out of 5. Because again, at 90 proof, maybe, some of the recipes I checked for this did say use 100 proof bourbon, and I can see why. All right, so this is at 90 proof, maybe not quite as powerful as you would want it to, but I say just add more bourbon. So versatility, 4 out of 5. Price, value, and availability. For $32.99, and then Total Wine had it for $31.55, or actually Specs had it for $31.55. I got this at Goody Goody for $32.99. Total Wine had it for $29.99. So really, for $30 bourbon, what this is, that's about right for what you get. This is certainly value, good value. The flavor profile is not my favorite, but it's better than a lot of name brands that I've tried. So this is readily available. It was in all the major liquor stores. So 10 out of 10, I think, for price, value, and availability. Bonus points. I think points off for being a blended bourbon that I didn't really know was going to be a blended. The simple corn sweet profile is not my favorite, but it's not terrible. I mean, this is pretty good. So 3 out of 5 bonus points, giving me a total score of 76, which is a bit low for me. But the drinkability is good, so a solid B for drinkability. Yeah, it's definitely better since I added more bourbon to it. Analysis and recommendation. Nowhere on the label did it say this was a blended bourbon. But then, you know, when you dig on the label, when you read the fine print, you get Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, and California. Okay, and I just didn't do that in the store. My bad. The taste really is good, but it's a simple sweet corn and honey, little tiny bit of vanilla, not much burn. I think this is an excellent beginner bourbon for a price that's righteous. The 90 proof also makes this a home run for those who want a bourbon without the burn, without the drama. But there's just not a whole lot here for me. I want bolder flavors. I want wood, deep wood, spice, leather, terroir. That's kind of what I want. You do not get terroir with this because it's blended. And terroir is what I was looking for. I wanted something from California. So I made a mistake, right? So there's a clue. When you go bourbon hunting, pay attention to the small print. I didn't bring my magnifying glass. When you get old, you got to do stupid stuff like that. All right, next up. The birthday for the state of Kansas is tomorrow. And I am studying the states where I or my immediate family have lived. So I do have a bit of a history to present with Kansas. I've got this bourbon, Boot Hill Bourbon from Dodge City, Kansas. How cool is that? This is a very interesting mash bill, so I hope to do that tomorrow. For now, though, for the United States Coast Guard and Redwood Empire, this is Stab the Dragon Productions and American Catechism out here.